Okay, the purpose of this network, and I'm going to put this in a text box. The purpose of this network is to demonstrate telnet access to a Cisco 2960 switch. And you'll read about this in Chapter 2. So right now I've got N devices selected down here in the bottom in Packet Tracer. I've got N devices selected. I'm just going to grab a PC. I'm going to go back to Network Devices. Go down to the bottom row here. We have routers and switches. I'm going to select switches. I'm going to select the 2960 switch. So on your canvas, you should have your name and the date. The purpose of this network is to demonstrate telnet access to a Cisco 2960 switch, or a PC and a switch. Doesn't matter what the number is. To the message box tool, and underneath the PC, well, I'm sorry, above both of them, I'm going to put the address space. Now you're going to hear some vocabulary that we will begin to build on next week. Right now, I'm just beginning to give you context. You won't understand everything we do right now unless you've done this before. All I'm doing right now is beginning to build context. Our address space is 192.168.5.0/24. That's our address space. And that's just a comment. It's just a text box. PC, if you click on PC1, we're going to do the fourth octet of the address, and this is going to be .5. .5 is just what we call the fourth octet. Again, you're hearing some vocabulary you haven't heard before. It's building context. We start breaking all this down, some today and more next week. For the switch, we're going to change the name to S0, and we're going to give it a fourth octet value of 99. Okay, so right now, now we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called IP version 4 addressing. Down here below both of them, I'm going to put a message box that says the complete address and mask. So for PC1, its complete IP address is 192.168.5, and then the fourth octet is .5, and its mask is /24, because they all are in this address space. /24 tells us the mask that everything in that, every host in that network must have the same mask, 255.0. So this is the address and mask for PC, for the PC. You could have PC0 or PC1, whichever one. And now the switch's fourth octet value is .99. So the entire address for the switch, IP address for the switch, is 192.168.5.99, and then the mask is the same, 255.255.255.0. Okay, they have to have the same mask. Everything in the local area network, they must have the same mask. All right, so now we have to configure this PC, and this is also called an end device. The PC is an end device. The Cisco switch is a networking device. All right, so I'm going to put that in a message box here in parentheses, end device. Okay, that's an end device. You don't have to put that in. I'm showing that for your benefit. And this is a networking device here, the switch. And as you'll learn later on in the course, the switch is a layer 2 device. Routers are layer 3 devices. The switch is layer 2, router is layer 3. Okay, so let's connect these. Use the lightning bolt for connections. If you hover over it, you see the word connections pop up. And we're going to use a straight through cable, which is the solid black cable. A crossover cable is the cable that's dashed. We're using straight through cable to connect the PC and the switch. Any port on the switch will do. Now for today, to configure the switch, we're going to do it in Notepad, and then we're going to click on the switch and paste it in there. And then next week I'll show you how the console cable would be used for that. Alright, so without further ado, let's go into our notepad. And the things I'm typing now is a configuration script, and you'll be able to do this on your own as we move along in the class. But right now I'm giving you the configuration script. Just copy it. I'm not going to paste it in the chat. I want you to type it in. Enable, configure terminal, hostname S0. Enable, configure terminal, hostname is one word, S0 for switch 0. Interface, VLAN 1. VLAN is one word, VLAN, space 1. IP address, 192.168.5.99, and the mask, 255.255.255.0, no shut. And that configures the interface on the switch virtual interface VLAN 1. We're building context here. I'm not expecting everybody to understand this yet. You will. Enable, password, Cisco. All passwords are Cisco, lowercase, no spaces. Now when I say no spaces, look carefully at the screen. Sometimes people do that. They put a space after the word Cisco. That injects a space after the word Cisco for the password. Don't do that. No spaces. So enable password Cisco. We're configuring what's called the virtual terminal lines for this switch. Line VTY. VTY stands for virtual terminal lines. 0 space 4. So 0 to 4. 0, it's 5 terminal lines. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're opening up 5 terminal lines for telnet access into this switch. We'll talk about telnet shortly. Password, again the same password, Cisco. We always use Cisco for this class to make it easier. No spaces. Password, space, Cisco, but no spaces after it. No space after the word Cisco. Transport, input, telnet. Login, exit. Save this because you're going to need it going forward because we'll break this down into its individual components. So we'll begin to do some of that today. Save as for me. Put this out of there. Week 1. Telnet access to switch. jan30. We're going to paste that into the switch, but we still have to configure our host machine, PC1. That's our end device. Well, let's paste this into the switch for now. So select it, copy. We're going to click on the switch for now. We'll talk about using the console cable later on. Possibly not today, maybe possibly next week, maybe not today. And your first prompt when you first get into the switch should be this, just the word switch with the right arrow character. We'll talk about the prompt levels later on, but this is the initial prompt level. We don't have any privileges here. And we're just going to paste. Click the paste button right down here in the lower right, or you can do right click paste, either one. So right click paste or click the paste button. And then we check our configuration to see if there's any errors. There are no errors here. We get some alerts that say interface VLAN 1 change state to up. Line protocol in interface VLAN 1 change state to up. And that's what we want to see. So again, we configured in, we did enable, and that took us to a different prompt level. It's called the privilege exec. And we did we typed configure terminal. That took us to yet another prompt level. what's called global configuration prompt. Here we can make changes to the configuration of the device. We set the host name to S0. You can see the host name change from switch to S0 when we executed this command, hostname S0. And then we typed in at the global configuration prompt interface VLAN1. And notice the prompt changed. Now we're at the configuration interface prompt level, where we can set the address of that interface. We gave it the IP version 4 address 192.168.5.99, the mask 255.255.255.0. That's synonymous with what we call a /24 CIDR mask, which we'll talk more about that later, not today, but as we get into the class. And then we executed no shut. No shut is how we bring an interface up on a Cisco device. Do a no shut, and then shut would bring it down. You'll see that a lot of the command line in Cisco is modeled after the Unix operating system. Enable password Cisco takes us back to the global configuration prompt, where it's just config with the # or hashtag. Enable password Cisco sets the password to get into the privilege exec, which is required for telnetting into the device, which is giving us remote access to the command line. When we're back at the privilege exec, when we're back at the global configuration prompt, we use line VTY 0 to 4 to configure telnet access on virtual terminal lines 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's 5 virtual terminal lines that we've opened up here. Access is using the password Cisco. Transport input telnet says allow telnet access. Telnet uses what we call port 23 at layer 4, port 23. Require login, exit. And when we're finished after typing exit, you're at the global configuration prompt. One note, when we typed in line VTY 0 to 4 from the global configuration prompt, notice it took us to the line configuration prompt. Prompt levels that we see here, the initial prompt level is the exec prompt. You really can't do much except just type enable. You can also do some show commands, which we'll learn about later. Enable takes us to the privilege exec prompt, which is the #. And then from the privilege exec prompt, we can type configure terminal, and that takes us to the global configuration prompt. At the global configuration prompt, we can start modifying the configuration of the device. We set the host name to S0. We set the address of interface VLAN1. We activated that interface by doing a no shut. And then we typed in enable password Cisco, which not only did it execute that command, but it took us back to the global configuration prompt because the command line interface recognizes that this is not an interface command, it's a global configuration prompt command. Enable password. Then at the global configuration prompt, we typed in line BTY 0 to 4 so we can configure the virtual terminal lines. We set the password to Cisco. Set the input to telnet, which is port 23 of the OSI model, port 23 at layer 4. Login, exit. Exit returns us to the global configuration prompt. We don't have anything else to configure on this switch, so we're finished configuring. Now we're going to configure the PC, the end device. Click on the PC, desktop, and then you see all these tiles. The ones we're going to predominantly use is command prompt here and IP configuration. We'll use the web browser later on in the class. Not today, but later on in the course. All right, let's go to IP configuration. This is not quite like a real device. In Windows 10 it looks different, but this is how it is in the simulator. We're going to have a static IP address, and we're just going to give it the IP address we specified here, 192.168.5.5. The fourth octet is .5. First 3 octets are 192.168.5. And then the mask is automatically given to us for reasons we'll discuss later. We don't need to configure a default gateway today. Command prompt, we'll type ipconfig to verify our configuration. Scroll up to Fast Ethernet 0 on this host device, and we can see that our IP version 4 address is 192.168.5.0 and the subnet mask 255.255.255.0, and we did not configure a default gateway. All right. So now from this PC, we're going to telnet into the switch. Telnet is a terminal emulator that we use to access the command line of a device that offers the telnet access feature. It's called a telnet server. 192.168.5.99. It's going to ask us for the password Cisco, and now it gives us the exec prompt. Type enable. It's going to ask us for another password Cisco, and now we're in. So this is the evidence that we're into the switch from PC1 or from the PC. It can be PC0, PC1, whichever PC you have. This provides evidence that we're successfully telnetted into that switch. All right, so this is the screenshot that I want to capture. So I'm going to put this in the canvas. So I can see the word telnet at the command prompt. User access verification is a response from telnet. And then you can't see the passwords, by the way, when you type them in at the command line. They're blanked out. But I should see the S0 with the privileged exec prompt, meaning the pound sign. All right, so I'm going to capture this right now. I'm going to use the snipping tool this time. Snipping tool. New. And I have to see your name in the canvas, right? Your name must be in the canvas, the purpose of this network. And go down and capture enough of that window so that I can see the S0 pound sign after you've entered the password twice. All right, now I'm in the snipping tool, so I'm going to do edit copy. Going to create a new Word document, paste, and your name should already be there in the upper left corner, so no need to put your name in the Word document. It should already be there. Week 1. Please organize your files accordingly. Week 1, January 30th. Okay. File name. Week 1, or I'm sorry, we're using jan30. And then telnet into switch. Telnet into switch is the name of the file. Telnet into switch. Put that in the chat. Okay, so your name, jan30, telnet into switch. And then you'll submit that as the second assignment for today.